My name is Elena. I'm 34, and I run patient financial operations for a regional hospital network that processes over 18,000 accounts a month. I know how a medical bill moves from the operating room to collections the way most people know how to unlock their phone. So when my parents called after 3 years of complete silence and invited me to dinner to start healing, I should have asked one question before I said yes. Who is really on the other side of that table? I didn't ask. I drove 35 minutes to the Cedar Ridge Bistro, walked through the front doors, and found 14 members of my family already seated around a long table covered in prime rib, seafood towers, and 2 bottles of wine that cost more than my first month's rent in this city. My father looked up from the head of the table, smiled the same smile he used when he needed a co-signer, and said the words I had spent my entire adult life trying to outrun. "You're the guarantor, right? You owe your mother that much." He thought he had cornered me. He hadn't counted on the 2 systems I still had access to, or on the phone call that was already scheduled to hit his cell phone 14 minutes later. Welcome back. If you've ever been the person expected to fix, to cover, to stay quiet while everyone else spent, this story is for you. But let me take you back 3 weeks, to the morning the invitation arrived, because that is the version of me they were counting on. And the version I had already stopped being. I do not own the hospitals. I manage the money that keeps them running. I started as a registrar at 19, typing insurance details into a system that felt older than the building. By 24, I was a patient financial counselor. By 28, I was supervising the entire billing department for 2 campuses. At 32, I became regional director of patient financial services. I am not rich. I have a 1-bedroom condo with a paid-off mortgage, a retirement account I do not touch, and exactly 1 quiet luxury. I order sparkling water every single time I eat out. Still or sparkling. That is the only choice I allow myself. When you grow up paying other people's deductibles, you learn to keep your own tab small enough to walk away from. That Tuesday morning I was in my office reviewing a denial report for a series of orthopedic cases, when my phone buzzed. 3 years of silence, and there it was, a notification from the family group chat I had been removed from the day I became the villain. Family. The little blue heart emoji my mother had chosen 7 years earlier when the chat was still used for sharing casserole recipes and photos of my sister's kids. I had not seen that heart in 3 years. The history was clean. Nothing above my mother's newest message. They had either cleared it or, more likely, they had been talking about me in a second group the entire time. Her message was warm, careful, almost rehearsed. "Elena, your father and I have been doing a lot of reflecting. We would love for you to come to dinner at Cedar Ridge this Thursday. Just the 4 of us. It's time to heal." Then 30 seconds later, "Family takes care of family, sweetheart. We've missed you." Family takes care of family. She used to say that when I was 20 and she needed my tax refund to cover the electric bill. She said it when I was 23 and Dad needed a co-signer on a truck he could not afford. She said it when my sister Claire's first apartment fell through, and I quietly paid the deposit and first month's rent. In my house, family takes care of family had always meant one thing. Elena takes care of family. I read the message twice. She had not said sorry. She had not said we were wrong. She had said it was time to heal. Passive voice. No one responsible. Never accept a handout from his daughter. When Claire got married, I covered the photographer, the cake, and half the venue. I smiled while Mom gave the toast about raising 2 strong girls. 2 strong girls. 1 bill. I did not do it because I was generous. I did it because I had learned, somewhere around age 15, that the fastest way to keep the peace was to make sure nobody had to ask twice. Ask once, Elena pays, dinner stays quiet. I trained them. I taught my parents that my wallet was a vending machine. Insert guilt, receive check. And when the machine finally set out of order, they did not troubleshoot it. They unplugged it and walked away. So when Mom's message appeared after 3 years, "Family takes care of family, sweetheart," I felt the old reflex fire in my chest like a muscle I had not stretched in years. Go. Fix it. Pay whatever it costs. Make it quiet again. But I also heard Dr. Patel's voice, steady as a metronome. You taught them you would always pay. That was your mistake to fix. Not by paying more, but by stopping. My coworker Priya told me not to go. She sat across from me in the break room the day after the invitation and said, "Elena, this has ambush written all over it." I laughed because Priya had never met my family, and she could already see it clearer than I could. My analyst Marcus said the same thing, shorter. Don't. But I had already decided. Not because I believed them. Not because I expected an apology. I wanted to sit across from my parents and find out whether 3 years had changed anything, or whether the silence had just been a longer version of the same conversation we had always had. One where I was expected to listen, agree, and pay that I wanted closure, even if closure meant confirming the door was nailed shut. There was something else too, and I am going to be honest about it because I think some of you will understand. I missed my mother. Not the mother who orchestrated. Not the one who kept score. The one who taught me how to fold hospital corners on a bedsheet when I was 10 and sang along to Fleetwood Mac while the dryer ran. That mother had not called in 3 years either, but some nights I still heard the music. So I told Priya I was going. I told Marcus I would be fine. I told myself the same thing and almost believed it. I set one rule. One dinner. Civil. No money. And if it felt wrong, I would leave before dessert. I wrote it on a sticky note and pressed it to my steering wheel the morning of. One dinner. Then home. That sticky note was still there when I pulled into the Cedar Ridge parking lot and counted the cars. I dressed simple on purpose. Black trousers, a charcoal blouse I wear to system audits, flat shoes. No jewelry except the small silver watch I bought myself the year I made regional director. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I had earned it and it kept good time and that felt like enough. I did not want to walk into Cedar Ridge looking like I was performing. My family already thought I flaunted my success. The truth was I drove a 7-year-old Toyota and meal prepped on Sundays like half of America. The drive took 35 minutes. I played no music. My hands stayed at 10 and 2. Somewhere around the highway merge, my stomach started to tighten in a way I recognized. The same feeling I get when a major payer rejects an entire batch of claims on a Friday afternoon, and I know the next 6 hours are going to hurt. Instinct. My body knew something my brain was still negotiating with. I almost turned around at the exit. Almost. But I thought about the Fleetwood Mac, and I thought about Dr. Patel's voice, and I kept driving. Cedar Ridge sat at the end of a quiet commercial street I had not visited in years. The kind of place where the parking lot is landscaped and the hostesses wear black. Dad's truck was in the second row. Mom's sedan next to it. Fine. Then I saw Aunt Ruth's white SUV. Onkel Paul's sedan. Claire's minivan with the faded baby on board sticker. 3 more cars I recognized. 2 I did not. My stomach dropped before I even opened the door. Just the 4 of us, Mom had written. I counted 9 vehicles. I sat in my car for 2 full minutes, engine off, hands on the wheel, reading that sticky note. One dinner. Then home. The smart thing would have been to reverse out of the lot and drive the 35 minutes back to my condo and eat leftover soup, and never think about the Mayfield family reunion I had not been invited to, or apparently had been invited to without being told the guest list. But I got out. I straightened my blouse. I locked the car and walked toward the entrance because I was 34 years old, and I had spent 3 years learning how not to run, and I was not going to start running again in a restaurant parking lot on a Thursday evening. The front doors were heavy glass with brushed nickel handles. Inside, the lobby smelled like rosemary and money. A hostess in a black dress smiled and checked her screen. Mayfield. I nodded. Your party is already seated. She said it the way hostesses say things when they have been dealing with a large group for an hour and are trying very hard not to look stressed. I recognized the expression. I had worn it myself 1,000 times on the patient side of the desk. She grabbed a single menu and led me toward the back. I could hear them before I could see them. Laughter. Clinking glasses. My Aunt Ruth's unmistakable laugh cutting through the murmur of every other table. One dinner. Then home. I turned the corner and saw the table. 14 chairs. Every single one filled except the one at the far end, directly across from my father. The table stretched the length of a private alcove. White linen. Heavy silverware. Candles in low holders. There were platters I could identify from 10 feet away. A seafood tower with lobster and king crab. Prime rib carved tableside. A cheese board the size of a cutting board. And in the center, 2 bottles of wine I recognized from the kind of vendor dinners I no longer attended. Retail around $180 each. Already half empty. They had been here a while. They had been ordering hard. The hostess paused at the edge of the alcove and glanced at me with a look that translated perfectly across every service industry I have ever worked in. Good luck. Then she leaned closer and said quietly, "Your father put a card down to hold the reservation. We require one for parties over 10. I filed that sentence the way I file every operational detail. Silently. Completely. Permanently. His card was on file. He had secured the table. And yet somehow I already knew the bill was not supposed to land on him. My mother saw me first. She stood up with both arms open and every head at the table turned. Elena. Oh, sweetheart, look at you. Applause. Actual applause. Like I was a returning soldier, and not the daughter they had ghosted for 1,000 days. Uncle Paul whistled. Aunt Ruth dabbed her eyes with a cloth napkin. Claire raised her wine glass and smiled the kind of smile that has teeth but no warmth. 14 people. Lobster and prime rib, and 2 expensive bottles of wine. Just the 4 of us, Mom had written. I sat down. What else do you do when 14 people are watching you and the chair is already pulled out and a server is pouring water into your glass before your purse hits the floor? I sat down and I smiled because that is what 15 years of frontline hospital work gives you. The ability to smile while your brain is running threat assessment at full speed. Mom settled back into her seat, beaming. We wanted it to be a surprise. The whole family together. Just like old times. I thought it was just the 4 of us, I said. Mom waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. Well, once Ruth heard, and then Paul, and then your cousin Derek. It just grew. You know how family. There it was again. The same 5 words, delivered with the same warm packaging, aimed at the same target. I squeezed back and said nothing. I was counting plates. My father is the kind of man who orders for the table. Not asks. Orders. He waved the server over. A young woman barely out of her 20s who looked like she was running on caffeine and pure will. And rattled off additions without glancing at a menu. Another round of the lobster, 2 more prime rib, and bring another bottle of that Cabernet. The good one. He said the good one, loud enough for the tables on either side of us to hear. Dad pulled his credit card from his wallet and held it between 2 fingers like a magician showing the audience a coin before the trick. Put it all on this, he told the server. We're celebrating tonight. The server, her name tag read Jordan, scribbled and nodded and disappeared toward the kitchen with the look of someone who desperately wanted a 5-minute break. I watched my father tuck the card back into his wallet with a little pat, the way you pat a dog that has performed well. Something was off. I had grown up watching Dad argue over the price of a muffler. I had seen him return a shirt because the sale tag was missing. Raymond Mayfield did not order $180 bottles of wine. He did not wave credit cards like flags. This was a performance, and it was aimed at me. Look how well we are doing, Elena. Look how little we needed you. Except the truck in the parking lot was the same one from 5 years ago with a dent in the rear quarter panel he had never fixed. And Mom's handbag, the same Coach purse she had carried since I was in high school, sat on the chair beside her with a cracked strap held together by a safety pin. They were performing. I just did not know the price of admission yet. The small cuts started around the second bottle. Aunt Ruth leaned across Uncle Paul and said, "Must be nice working in those fancy hospitals while the rest of us clip coupons." She laughed when she said it, the way people laugh when they want you to know they are serious. Cousin Derek asked if I ever felt guilty living so well while my parents were going through a rough patch. I did not know about a rough patch. Nobody had told me about a rough patch. Claire, without looking up from her phone, added, "She wouldn't know. She hasn't been around." Each comment landed with the precision of something rehearsed. Not scripted exactly, but aligned, the way a choir finds the same note without a conductor. They had been talking about me, about my absence, my money, my life, and they had arrived tonight with a shared understanding of the story. Elena left. Elena has plenty. Elena pus. Aunt Ruth delivered the thesis statement. She reached across the table, took my hand like she was comforting me at a funeral, and said, "Family doesn't keep score, dear." I almost laughed. Family doesn't keep score? This from a woman who once stopped speaking to her own daughter-in-law for 8 months over a Christmas seating arrangement. I did not laugh. I pulled my hand back gently and picked up my glass. Sparkling water. The only thing in front of me. The only thing I had ordered. The contrast was almost funny. 14 people swimming in lobster and Cabernet, and me with a glass of San Pellegrino sitting at the end of the table like a designated driver at a bachelor party. Jordan, the young server, passed behind me and I caught her eye. "Just the water tonight?" she asked, quiet. "Just the water," I said. She nodded like she understood something I had not said out loud. I excused myself to the restroom around the 40-minute mark. I needed 2 minutes without Aunt Ruth's commentary and a door I could lock. The Cedar Ridge restroom was the kind with cloth hand towels and eucalyptus soap, and a full-length mirror that made you look slightly better than you felt, which was a neat trick considering I felt like I was digesting glass. I turned on the faucet, pressed cold water against my wrists the way you do when you need your heart rate to cooperate with your brain. Then I saw it. A phone on the edge of the marble